Thank you for joining us today. We're going to pause as we allow our attendees to come into the webinar today.
Good afternoon and evening, depending on where everyone's joining. So happy to be here this afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us.
Like Richard said, thank you so much for joining us today for our next edition of our 49er Industry Chat. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here at California State University, Long Beach. And we're very excited that you're joining us today. Before we start, I would like to let you know the session is being recorded and it will live on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. And also we encourage you throughout the chat today to submit any questions you have for our guest speaker using the Q&A box located above or below your screen. And now it's my honor to introduce to you our guest speaker. Richard Garcia is Chief of Staff at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. In his role, he works with the USHCC team by providing support on a broad scope of areas, including advocacy, external affairs, and administration. Previously, he has led groups to promote international relations and global citizenship, as well as expanding opportunities for leaders in underrepresented communities to participate in civic engagement. He has also engaged directly with lawmakers in Sacramento, California, and Washington, D.C. as a student advocate for increased accessibility for higher education for over 35,000 students from his campus and nearly 500,000 students from the California State University system. And now in his current role on behalf of the Hispanic and minority-owned small businesses in Washington, D.C., Richard earned his BA in International Studies and in Economics from CSULB. Please welcome our 49er Industry Chat guest speaker, Richard Garcia. Thank you, Richard, for joining us today.
No, Noemi, thank you. On the contrary, it's a pleasure and an honor to be back even in a virtual capacity back at the beach. And thank you for leading really the CSULB Alumni Association and always making sure that we stay connected, not only between us, but within all of our 49ers that are here in DC and across the country. And Ricky, of course, for leading our advocacy on campus, and to President Connolly for her leadership. No, a little bit about myself. Thank you again for the honor to be here with y'all today. I'm originally from Long Beach, first generation Mexican American. Both of my parents are from Mexico. They immigrated to the US from Mexico City a year before myself and my twin brother were born. And so I was born and raised in Southern California area. I grew up in the Norwalk, Cerritos, Bellflower area, grew up all the time going to Long Beach. And so I grew up in a very binational household, so to speak. I always felt like I kind of grew up in a little bubble, as you know, people with immigrant parents to do. I've come to find out of you know, staying very closely connected to culture and roots and all these traditions that my parents carry over from Mexico. And so I lead with that because everything that I've done throughout my life, even at my 27 years of age, right? But everything that I've done in my entire life has always been deeply rooted in making sure that we support, you know, all of us as Americans. But of course, I see so many opportunities to pay what I've received in terms of education opportunities, et cetera, forward to others in our Latino and other minority communities. And so as the years went by, again, born, raised in SoCal area, by the time that I was 12 years old, my family decided to move to Guadalajara, to Mexico for a little bit. And so I did my middle school out there along with my brother, did like half of high school, came back, graduated Gar High School in Cerritos, California, class of 2012, and then afterwards transitioned to Cal State Long Beach. And so I know I'm here to talk about that transition between Long Beach and DC and where I'm at right now, but really that as an international studies and econ major, as Noemi, you pointed out, and thank you for sharing that bio, it's always been my passion to work in roles similar to the one that I'm in today. So as Chief of Staff of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I'm part of a team that helps support and advocate our nation's 4.7 million Hispanic-owned businesses. We work with a national network of 260 Hispanic chambers of commerce across the country, including our very own regional Hispanic Chamber of Commerce out in Long Beach, California, who works very closely with the Hispanic Business Student Association on campus at CSULB and several others in the SoCal area. And so we help support Latino and Latina entrepreneurs across the country to help start and scale their businesses and really support our community through entrepreneurship. And I'll end with this. I did not know that I would get to where I'm at today, period, right there. And then in addition to that, in this short period of time, but I think it's just been a matter of, always being open to challenges, I feel like I've always grown up when I'm outside of my comfort zone. And when I tend to take opportunities as, okay, I'll say yes and figure out how to do things later. And so anyway, I'm so excited to be here in my position here in DC, and of course, as part of this conversation this evening to talk more about my time at CSULB.
Wonderful. Thank you, Richard, for sharing that, and what a great stage to set up. One question before we start. So are you fluent in Spanish? Granted that
Absolutamente.
How about writing?
Yes.
Wonderful. So to start off, just want to get your thoughts, why CSULB? What was your experience like? Did you have any mentors? Did you work closely with any faculty that really guided you to pursue possibly a career in public service?
Sure. Thank you, Noemi, for that question. And that actually raises a really good point from early on. So to answer why CSULB, when I rejoined high school here in California, here in the United States, I joined as a junior. And so as we all know, you apply for college at the beginning of your senior year. So junior year, of course, senior year grades count and all that kind of stuff, but you really have to give it your all to the rest of the junior year. When I landed back in LA, again, as a first generation American here, I had no idea about 99% of the opportunities that were available to me at the time, just because I didn't have any of those mentors early on in my career, as you mentioned, to guide me through. I didn't even know what AP courses were, advanced placement courses. I didn't know what honors courses were. I didn't, I saw all these posters around campus about these clubs and organizations, and I never really leveraged those opportunities and resources as closely as I should have. That's not to say that I didn't excel in other areas. I got strong grades and I was involved in, other community service opportunities, especially during my middle school and early high school years. But it was all kind of like a blur when I got here to the United States back from Mexico and learned how the system works. And so when I heard about CSULB from, obviously, first of all, several of my friends in high school who saw it as a strong option to join college right after high school. But then also I've always been interested in the international studies program. I declared myself as an international studies major before I declared as econ, because I came to love econ later on in my professional development. And so I did my research of campuses in Southern California that I could hopefully join as part of an international studies program. And the IST program headed up by Dr. Richard Marcus on campus is an excellent program. I from the time that I joined in 2012 to when I graduated in 2017, I saw it grow and flourish, not only in terms of faculty, in terms of curriculum development, even the International Studies Student Association, which I was a part of on campus. And so really that kind of sealed the deal for me, seeing all this, all these resources being put into the IST department and the proximity to home. Because of my circumstances, I had to be close to home, from my parents and such. It really seemed like the best place for me to choose to take my career to the next path. And then later on, after I got into Cal State Long Beach through friends and faculty, and I can get to this, a little bit later, but that's when I started, leveraging more of the local community, and others kind of like stepped in and helped me guide and said, hey, Richard, you should make sure you don't miss this opportunity, or hey, there's a scholarship or whatever, or this internship opportunity you should take up.
Wonderful. And yeah, and I think that's something we always like to encourage our students, is to really explore all the resources that are available on campus. It doesn't hurt to ask, and really ask your faculty members if they know of opportunities that you could leverage and just expand your horizon. I think, many times us in the Latino community, no one before us has navigated higher education, and we explore it on our own. And the only resource that we have are those that are on campus.
That was my case. So that was exactly my case. And I wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for Cal State Long Beach. And, I can share the story really quickly.
Yeah.
So later on, fast forward a couple of years in my undergrad. So this was about 2015, 2016. I happened to meet a professor in the geography department at Cal State Long Beach. Her name's Dr. Una Lassiter. And she, to this day, continues to be someone that I hold near and dear to my heart for all the support and all the potential that she saw in me as another student at Cal State Long Beach in expanding my career in international affairs and foreign affairs and national security and all that kind of stuff. I took a class with her mid through my career at Cal State Long Beach, and we always stayed in touch. She helped lead a couple of student organizations, and I took, I think, 2 or 3 classes with her, and we kind of hit it off. And one day, she, when we were talking, she kind of tells me, "Hey, Richard, you're interested in going to Washington at some point, right? You kind of mentioned it," because that's like one of the learnings that I had early on is you need to share with people kind of like what your path is, or if you need a plan, you can share, "Hey, as the more you spread the word about where you're headed or where you want to go, the more people pay attention and will share these kinds of opportunities with you," right? So I had shared with Dr. Lassiter, "Hey, I've been thinking about it. I don't know how I'll make it happen, but, my pipe dream, right, to come out here." And so one day she called me up and said, "Hey, you want to go to Washington, right?" Yeah, but, I can't afford it, or I have to figure it out if it's realistic. The short answer is yes. The long answer is who knows if I can make it happen, right? And she's like, "Hey, there's this opportunity, this internship program. It's called the Fund for American Studies. They put you up, you can get some financial aid. You're there for a semester. Try it out, see what happens. Apply, and we'll see if it sticks, kind of thing." And that's another, not to roll on here with the kind of lessons that I took, but this is something else that I learned on campus is apply to as many things as you can or that you're interested in, because the worst that can happen is a no or a no response. And then even better, sometimes if they give you that no or whatever, you can ask them, "Hey, what's missing?" And then, you can come more prepared by the next time you apply. So I remember I was filling in the application. I'm like, there's no way they're going to accept me. It's probably full of overachievers that, have been, leading organizations since they were 12 in middle school or whatever. But I said to myself, you know what, worst that can happen is no. And so I put in my information there. At the time, I had already led a couple of one student organization in particular on campus. I was co-chair of the International Student Association on campus, along with Roman Garcia, a dear friend of mine who I just saw again last week. I did that. I did Model UN. I did a couple of other groups, and I put my experience there on the application. Lo and behold, a couple of months later, I get an email saying that I'm accepted. If you accept, sign here, kind of thing, and we'll work through logistics. And by January of 2017, I was on a plane to DC and to start off my internship at this organization called the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And that's how I started out my story here, where I'm chief of staff now today. I started off as an intern 4.5 years ago at this point. But ever since then, I've been able to grow and develop and learn so much about a world that I wasn't familiar with. Again, going back to the whole first generation, right? And really find this, passion in helping support our Latino community and our communities in general across the country, because we work very closely with national partners and other minority groups as well. And so anyway, just going back to the whole Cal State Long Beach thing, all of that happened just because Dr. Lassiter said, "Hey, I heard you mention that you want to go. Is that still something?" And hit it off after that. And the rest is history. And now here we are. So it's a cool story, at least I think, or an example of all these opportunities that you get at Cal State Long Beach, because now I rub shoulders with people of all backgrounds, whether by age, academic background, or whatever. And here we are, just putting, as we say in Spanish, nuestro granito de arena, our little piece of sand in this bigger project of helping create positive change out here in Washington.
Wonderful. And to go a little bit back before, I know you studied abroad as well. So what was that experience like? And do you think it was something you needed to do to maybe enhance your international studies? But I know you lived, in Mexico for a while, so you already had that in your pocket.
Sure. I did, thanks, Nomi. I did two study abroads actually.
Okay.
But one of them is, I'll tell the story in a second. My first one was back in Guadalajara. I did a study abroad the semester of, I believe it was during 2016, either spring or fall of 2016. And to answer your question about whether it was a good idea or if it's, something that I would it's a requirement within the international studies major, and I think it should be a requirement for everyone on campus. Obviously, it's easier said than done because not everyone can afford it and such, right? And thankfully, Cal State Long Beach has scholarships available for folks that are interested in studying abroad and may not think that they're able to afford it or may just need that extra push, right? But I love that opportunity because, as it turns out, as we all know, Cal State Long Beach and the International Studies Department have really strong partnerships with universities all over the world. So it doesn't need to be, in my case, Mexico. I have friends that went to Hong Kong. I have friends that went to Seoul, South Korea. I have friends that went through Europe and Germany and, all these crazy places. They come back with these stories that changed their lives. Like, I've seen it happen. I have one friend that went to go study in Seoul, and he just like hit it off so much with someone that his partner to this day is someone that he met during his study abroad out there at Yonsei University. And so just to put it into perspective. And so I personally learned a lot from that semester out in Mexico, out in Guadalajara, because a lot of people did say, oh, well, aren't you going back home or something like that, right? And to an extent, yeah, that was kind of true. But on the other side, studying abroad gives you the opportunity, at least in my experience, to live on my own for my first time, to learn so much about myself, to put yourself in a place that's unfamiliar and break routine from where you typically are at. And you learn so much, not just academically through these programs, you also learn more about yourself just by having these relationships with people from all over the world. And so my last point in terms of studying abroad is, Cal State Long Beach really has a lot of really cool partnerships with universities and higher education institutions all over the world. Yonsei, to use that example again, is one of the best universities in Seoul and in South Korea. And they have, just like that, they have partnerships all over the world. And I really encourage anyone who's interested in even, easiest thing to do is just look up CSULB Study Abroad on Google and it'll come up, and just page through kind of the programs that are available in the cities where you can live in. And you might think it's a pipe dream, and you might think you can't make that happen. But, preparing yourself the right way, going to your advisor at CSULB and asking, how can we make it happen? Approaching someone you may know at the Associated Students Incorporated, ASI, because they have scholarships there too, aside from the regular grants on campus. You might be surprised at what you can make happen, and I really encourage it because you learn a lot about yourself through those study abroad experiences. And the second story, the part two, Noemi, about that. So that was my first study abroad. Another study abroad, quote unquote, rather internship abroad that I did, I had applied to it during my time at CSULB, but it didn't pan out until afterwards because it was an internship at US Embassy Madrid in Spain. That took a security, for anyone that's familiar with it, the security clearance process takes forever. And so I had applied and I didn't get to go on this internship until the semester after I graduated in 2016. And so that's another story of how, I was kind of like on this role of like kind of applying to different things, because that doesn't mean that everything I applied to, I got accepted to. That's certainly not the case, at least with me. But this was another story of words that they can say is no. And so speaking of Cal State Long Beach, just with talking with friends and, faculty and such, I was encouraged to pursue opportunities to intern at the State Department at an embassy. Again, as an international studies and econ major, my dream is to hopefully one day participate in the foreign service and, lead our country through diplomacy, our first line of defense, as they like to say. And
Right.
so I applied. I went to usajobs.gov, thanks to all the experiences that I've had at Cal State Long Beach and the work that I've been able to do, helping, a lot as a part of a team to make our campus a better place. I went in and I put in my information. I said, worst case scenario, nothing pans out, right? And I sent it in and I put, there's this page as part of the application cycle, aside from like, statement of purpose or whatever. One of them asks you, okay, so choose here from this list across the country, across the world, sorry, where do you want to go? And it's really cool. It has like all the different regions of the world, like Western Hemisphere, Europe and Asia or whatever. And I was like, wow, you can just, it's one of those moments in life where you can almost feel your life being like, all right, which way are we going to go? And just like one screen and one quick second, like a decision that you make. And I put in their number one choice, I think it was Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, it was Madrid, Spain, because, the Spanish language component, right?
Yeah.
And so one day after a couple of months, I get a call saying, hey, are you interested in a job interview for this internship position? Sure, of course. It's the State Department, of course. And so I did it. Long story short, went through the whole process. I flew out. I was there for, I think, 2.5 months from March to June of 2018. And it was the most exciting experience aside from, what we're doing right now at the chamber. It was the most exciting experience because it goes back to what I was sharing earlier about Guadalajara and Mexico. You learn so much about yourself living on your own. There, I really was in an unfamiliar place because I hadn't been in a really, really, really long time. And so it was a cool experience to do that. And I certainly encourage anyone that can to explore those as possibilities and knock on doors, apply to grants. If you get denied, it's a good exercise. Worst case scenario, you get a no. Best case scenario, you get a yes, and you're on your way to wherever you want in the world and studying abroad at Cal State Long Beach.
Definitely. What a great experience that you had there. I had a question from the audience. Can anyone apply for a study abroad? Do you have to be part of a particular program on campus to apply?
As far as I know, unless y'all want to take this question, as far as I know, no. It's only a requirement for the International Studies Department, but for other majors, you just have to work it out with your advisor to make sure that classes that you select when you study abroad line up and match with your career plan at Cal State Long Beach, because that's something key that you have to make sure to do. The last thing you want is to go out there. And yeah, you typically choose them carefully so that you give yourself a little bit of leeway to get familiar with an area. You're not as rigorous academically, I would say, or some people do that. By all means, more power to you if that's your case. But I know for me, I kind of like framed it in a way where it would be a little bit easier to digest the curriculum. But the short answer is yes, anyone can do it. I would just encourage you to talk to your advisor to make sure, one, to make sure you're aware of financial resources available to you. And two, once you kind of choose the 2 or 3 campuses that you want to go to, the study abroad office has, well, at the time, I don't know if now it's all digital, but at this big, huge binder full of classes that each university offers, and they have it neatly organized of this is what they offer in Singapore, for example, and this is what it lines up to at our campus in CSULB. So absolutely, yes, I would encourage you to check it out.
Wonderful. So let's forward to where you're at now. I mean, you started as a fellow for the USHCC.
Yeah.
Now you're chief of staff. What advice do you have for our students that are interning that might visualize, what, I'd like this place. What could I do to hopefully one day become a staff member within the organization? And I did see you interned and you left and then you came back.
Yeah, exactly. I came back to finish the semester at Cal State Long Beach. This is one of those areas where I still feel that, I can share my personal story in the hopes that it helps other folks. I don't consider myself the end all be all by any means, but at least what helped in my end, I've always had this spirit of trying to help out as much as possible wherever I'm at, whatever I'm involved in. For some weird reason, I get really committed into it, and I'm like, go all in, roll up my sleeves, and I've spent countless days just helping support this organization ever since I was an intern. And in every role that I've had, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I've always kind of in my mind pretended as if I'm in a role higher than what I'm at. Like, for example, when I was an intern, I wanted to be either a program manager or an assistant or whatever it may be. And so I would set myself that level of standard of, you need to show up on time, you need to make sure you're groomed well, you need to make sure that, posture is everything, sit up straight and, look people in the eye, handshake, the typical stuff, because you'd be surprised at how far that goes, at least from my personal perspective, seeing, others here in DC. It sets you apart when people can visualize you and see you and say, if the CEO looks at you and says, I can see this, this guy or this girl working for me, or I can see this person being part of the team, or, oh, this person gets, turns in stuff on time, they get along great with the team, they're professional when they need to, but they know how to loosen up a little when you don't have to, put yourself up, in events or whatever it may be. And I feel like that's always helped me everywhere I go, because I was there as an intern for about 6 months, and the summer came around and they asked me to stay on a couple more months, and I did. And then I stayed in touch, just being good friends, because that social aspect of things is really important. It's not just, do you turn things in on time? Because you could be, the most, and I'm not trying to be mean here or anything, but you can be the most dull person in the world and still turn in stuff on time and still fill in and check off your responsibilities. But people really like someone who they can, I feel, laugh with, who they can, confide in, who they can trust, who's reliable. And so on all fronts, because at the end of the day, we're not robots anywhere in the world, not here in DC or, in Geneva, Switzerland, in the UN, or Brussels in the EU or whatever. Like, we're not robots or faceless bureaucrats out here in DC. We're all human beings at the end of the day. And what I've seen really shine through with certain folks that I've had the pleasure and the honor of working with is those that pay attention to those details and know when to be serious and when to be productive and effective and talk about work, etc. But also know how to be there for each other as part of a team, as a human being. I think that's really the key into that. Balance is a key component of that success that you can have in terms of escalating. So it's really what I did. I just stayed in touch. I was always there for them with the time that I was there. I stayed in touch thereafter. And then they give me a call one day, and they say, hey, do you want to come back? Because we actually have a couple openings. You said that you graduated, X date, whatever, right? Yeah, come back, and doors open for you in case you want anything. And at the time, I was still waiting on the security clearance, right, in Madrid and all of that. So I said, yeah, let's do it. I obviously walked them through everything, and this might happen in Madrid or whatever. I may have to take a leave and come back. But outside of that, they were fine with it. And so I was able to go get that done, come back. And I mean, like I've been mentioning, the rest is history. I think that's the biggest component that I would share, is just reliability and being there as a human being for others.
Definitely. And you talk about that power of networking that's so important for everyone to consider and really tone that scale, because you never know who might be able to make that recommendation, whether it's for an internship or a job opening in the future.
It's that balance, like the networking that you just mentioned, and also, as we were discussing earlier, sharing what your plans are, what your dreams are with folks. Because again, going back to the Spanish phrases, there's one at least from Mexico, that goes, el que no habla, Dios no lo oye. And I like to say that along with the team. You're probably know me. And which means, if you don't, it literally means if you don't speak, God doesn't hear you.
I won't hear you.
And so it kind of is like, if you don't tell people what you want or what you need, no one's going to know. Like, people can't read your mind. So anyway, I live by that.
So chief of staff for, this organization that is assisting 4.7 million Hispanic owned business owners. What is your typical day like?
Sure. I mean, I can just kind of recap today in a sense. So I started at 9 a.m. Not just kidding. There I was with my cup of coffee. No, I'm just kidding. No, in all seriousness, in a regular day, there's certainly a pattern, but I wouldn't say that there's a regular day, because things are always, we're organized, but we're also nimble in what we need. And so when a member picks up the phone and calls us, we tend to react pretty quickly and try to be helpful wherever we can. But to your point, to your question, Noemi, we have 2 big events throughout the year. It's our national conference, which typically takes place in the fall. For anyone interested, September 26th through 28th in Las Vegas. I'll send the link afterwards, or in case anyone's interested in joining. So there's that national conference that has us busy right now, and our legislative summit that happens in the spring. Typically, organizations out here in DC will host what is usually referred to as a Hill Day, where they bring up their members in the spring, because that's when Congress is finalizing negotiations on budgets and what's priority and what's not. And so national associations like ourselves will invite our members to come here to DC, convene for a day or two, go through workshops, events, and then afterwards meet with their members of Congress, whether senators or House reps, to lobby and represent and make sure our voices are heard as Latino business owners. And so anyway, my point was, we have these 2 big events and several programs in between. On a day-to-day basis, it's a lot of making sure, at least from my personal perspective, as chief of staff, as sometimes I get called, I feel kind of like an air traffic controller, like at an airport. My personal role is to make sure to be helpful to the team, first of all. I always like to say, my job is to make sure everyone here looks good, of course, including the CEO. And then secondly is to make sure the trains are running on time. That's basically what it boils down to. And then obviously there's more detail into it than that. And it's a lot of meeting with different members of the team and making sure, to be helpful wherever we can, huddle with folks, whether it's in the government affairs shop or the communication shop or the program shop or whatever, to kind of say, hey, by the way, I heard this from, our CEO, Ramiro Cavazos, or the board. This is kind of the direction that we need to lead with, but also knowing how to balance between, kind of providing a little bit of guidance to the team where needed, but also acknowledging their expertise and their professionalism and letting folks feel ownership of the progress and of the accomplishments that each of them have within their own departments. We all work together, we're not siloed, right? But each of us have our own strengths, and there's a reason why each of them are part of the team. And I like to share this whenever I can with members of the team. So I kind of just I try to just nudge, guide, and then kind of let go and say, this is, my style isn't to try to micromanage. At least if anyone's on the team listening, I hope, you can keep me honest, and I try not to micromanage or anything like that. I kind of just tend to go, here's where we need to go. I trust you to take us there, and I'm here as a resource for help in case, we need to plan with each other. That's what it boils down to. So it's a lot of, as in my role, I can't ever say I don't know how to do anything. I have to be familiar with how to, how we get in touch with members of Congress, or how we draft press releases, or how we execute events, or how we liaise with members who need help and support. And so it's a really interesting perspective, because when I started as special assistant, because I was assistant before I was chief of staff, I was already kind of doing that. And when I ascended to my current role 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago already, it was kind of that, but with a little bit more autonomy and being able to, especially when meeting with external parties and such, with the business card goes a longer way when you're able to share what you're able to accomplish with your team on a day-to-day basis. So it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of making sure the trains are leaving on time and such, and also, and perhaps most importantly, making sure to include your team as part of that progress, so that each of them feel ownership about how we're headed, and they all feel like they're a strong part of the USHCC team, because they are at the end of the day. So
wonderful. So I know, I went on your website, I did see there's various programs and resources. How does our organization go about getting out into the community and encouraging the Hispanic business owners to join the organization? But two, are we talking about family-owned businesses, any business, or corporations and LLCs that are part of the organization?
Sure. So that's an excellent question, Noemi. Thank you for that. This is where our national network of 260 Hispanic chambers plug in. We see ourselves as an affiliate to each of them. We see each of our chamber leaders as colleagues and partners. And the most recent example of how we were able to make this happen is, as I mentioned, our national conference is going to Las Vegas at the end of September. We were in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago for our kickoff reception that we hosted to kick off the national conference in Las Vegas. And we met with local Latina and Latino-owned businesses. And that's part of the work that we're trying to do every day, especially as we've taken a new strategic direction as of last year, especially in light of COVID. We want to make sure that every Hispanic-owned business in the country, all 4.7 million of them, are affiliated with their local Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Because to us, it's really important to be able to connect them with the resources, the opportunities. Speaking of helping folks be aware of opportunities and resources out there, we want to do a better job of connecting those small and medium and large Hispanic-owned businesses with a lot of opportunities and resources available through the federal government and through corporate America. So to your point, we have the majority of our national businesses across the country are members of local chambers, because I believe the statistic is between 90 to 95% of Hispanic-owned businesses are small businesses or sole proprietorships, actually. Right. And so, meaning that they're just one employee, so self-employed sometimes, right? And so we, on our end, we work with them through our national network of chambers. And then we work through the medium and larger size Hispanic-owned businesses through our Hispanic Business Enterprise Program at the chamber. And the last point there is, and those are typically our medium and large size businesses across the country. We also engage in advocacy and outreach to help them be part of this project at the USHCC. And then finally, it's our corporate members. We work with more than 200 of America's largest corporations, the Coca-Colas of the world, the Toyotas of the world, et cetera, because there's so much energy behind helping support our Latino community through entrepreneurship and helping support our Latino businesses through supplier diversity initiatives to make sure that we tap into the fastest growing segment of Hispanic-owned of small businesses in the United States, which is our Hispanic business community.
Wonderful, thank you. How do, I think we understand, we've grown up in this Hispanic community where so many of our business owners might be iffy and don't understand, especially if they're not, addressed in their Spanish language. How do people find the resources, like, to be able to join their local chambers if they wanted to?
So, so that's another area where we've done some work as well in reaching out to them through national channels, but our local chambers do an excellent job of being strong representatives and strong leaders in their communities on behalf of the Latino community in general, not just even Latino businesses. And so we're everywhere. And to your point, we do it in both English and in Spanish. A lot of our outreach, especially last year, we went through a really hard times as a country, and especially as a Latino business community during the COVID-19 pandemic, when it first started, when everything first shut down. There was a lot of talk and a lot of requested action that was being conveyed to us, to our local chambers, and to us as a national chamber, that we need to help support our Hispanic-owned businesses as the lockdowns were beginning to happen, in providing either financial resources or any kind of help at all to make sure that we don't lose them. And so I mentioned this as an example because we did a lot of outreach at the time because of it. We reached out and we worked with the local chambers to provide technical assistance. We first engaged in advocacy through our chambers with our friends here in Washington, D.C. to advocate for small business relief by way of the Paycheck Protection Program, economic injury disaster loans, Main Street Lending Program by the Federal Reserve, among others. And so there was this long process of reaching out to the chamber, step one. I'm reaching out to the chambers and business, step one. Step two, hearing what their needs are. Step three, conveying those needs to our partners in Washington, because they needed to know in the COVID relief packages that were coming out what our priorities and what our businesses on the ground actually need, rather than a bureaucratic solution that doesn't mesh well with what the reality is on the ground. And then once we were successful in that advocacy, because PPP eventually came out and EIDL came out and all these other resources came out, then we turn back around and go, okay, small businesses, chamber leaders, this is all the resources and the information that's available to you, and you need to make sure that we're reaching out to our Latino and Latina business owners to have access to the economic relief that they have a right to access to help support and save their businesses. And so I obviously don't want to make it seem like it was all us, right? Like it was national advocacy letters with all of our national chamber leaders sent to DC, and some of them, were very strong about supporting those kinds of initiatives at the state and local level as well. I know the Idaho Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Enrique Rivera, CEO out there, is also someone that beat the drum really hard with the governor out there in Idaho and all over the country, wherever our Latino business communities are at. And so as we did that, that relief came through. We provided technical assistance to them in English and in Spanish through webinars, through radio shows, through TV shows, we had a program called Nuestros Negocios that we did with Telemundo, and we still do, I should say, with NBC, Comcast, Telemundo. And it's a series for Latino entrepreneurs to understand more how they can help support their businesses. We did have another weekly radio show with Spanish Broadcasting System, Mega 96.3 in LA, and I think La Raza 97.9 as well. And we have a weekly radio show called La Voz del Negocio Hispano, where we bring in folks from the Small Business Administration or from corporate America, or even us at the USHCC, to walk through what the latest updates are and how to access this relief. So it's a lot of outreach, it's a lot of grassroots advocacy, and it's a lot of overall making sure that you don't lose touch with the folks who you're serving at the end of the day, and making sure that we're out in the country providing these resources to them.
Wonderful. I got a quick clarification. When you talk about Hispanic businesses, I mean, it's all inclusive. We're talking about Mexican, South American, Latin American businesses, right?
Yes. Our CEO likes to mention a lot that being Hispanic is a state of mind. I tend to agree. We come in all shapes, sizes, colors, etc. There's Hispanics, of course, in Mexico, all the way down to Argentina and Chile, and everywhere in between. Obviously, Spanish folks, and even in Asia and the Philippines. There's a lot of heritage there. So for the purposes of the chamber here and for Hispanic business here in the United States, it's any business that has a majority ownership on behalf of someone that identifies as Hispanic or Latino.
Wonderful. So if you had to pick, you work a little bit in advocacy, outreach. Do you have a preference of what you'd like to do more than the other one?
I think that's a good question. I think so. There's a short answer and a long answer to that. The short answer is probably in the advocacy realm, just because I'm a little bit of a policy nerd, and I like to really get into the weeds and committee and all that kind of stuff. But the longer answer is, in all seriousness, it all meshes together. Like by doing advocacy, so in your two examples, for example, by doing advocacy, you're doing outreach. Outreach is a part of advocacy. And then if I say, for example, within different departments at the chamber, one can't exist without the other, right? Because even the communications shop, for example, what do we communicate? Well, our needs for advocacy and what our priorities are, or reaching out to the local businesses, or the events planning side. What event are you planning? Well, you're planning these trainings and these seminars that we were talking about earlier. So it all meshes together. But I would say, in my view, and this isn't a diplomatic answer by any means, it's the reality. They're all equally important. I just, as an international studies, political science, economic person, I think that I just enjoy so much doing that advocacy, which is why I'm looking into doing foreign service at some point and serving our country through that means.
Wonderful. And kind of to align, we've got a question from the audience. Are there any projects you're particularly excited to tackle because they align with your personal values and interests?
Yes, I am actually really excited at the fact that, speaking about my personal interests and all of that, I was admitted for this fall at Georgetown University for the Walsh School of Foreign Service and the McCourt School of Public Policy. And I've shared it with already, put it on social media. I've shared it with folks already. Our team here at the USHCC has always been super supportive. Ramiro Cavazos, our CEO, was one of my letters of recommendation. It's been a huge process throughout it all, but it's interesting how things play out, because again, going back to how my days in high school, I didn't even know what AP or honors courses were. Now here I am. I always known that I wanted to be in foreign service. I always knew that I wanted to be in diplomacy. And now here I am about to embark on the next challenge of my next phase in life, which is getting my master's, my dual master's in foreign service from the Wall School of Foreign Service and public policy from the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown here in DC. That starts August 25th. And so I'm excited. I got a lot of support from Cal State Long Beach, and I don't mean that lightly. I've had so much close contact still with faculty and my friends from back in the day that have encouraged me to continue to chart my course, so to speak. And so this 49er is going to be represented. I'll be half 49er, half Hoya for a little bit, but Cal State Long Beach will be represented out there, and I couldn't have done it without the preparation that I got at the International Studies Department, at Cal State Long Beach, at the Econ Department, of course, and thanks to the community that helped uplift. So I really feel I sometimes feel like the poster child of that phrase, like it takes a village, right, to raise someone. And so it's everyone just supporting each other, everyone being there, and that's why I'm always so persistent about this. We're all humans, and we're all just trying to chart our course and see how we fulfill our lives our own way. And we may not know, by the way, we may not know what we want to do right now. And it may be like sometimes intimidating hearing from people that say like, oh, I have things all figured out. I don't have things figured out, by the way. And so it may seem like it to some folks, but it's really interesting what happens when you kind of like, there's a hat over the wall analogy. I think President John F. Kennedy mentioned in one of his speeches back in the 60s. You throw your hat over the wall and you figure out how to get over that wall afterwards. That's been my MO for the past couple of years already. And it's served me well, I hope, in my current role, in my future roles. And to answer your question, that's the biggest challenge on the horizon. I wouldn't describe it as a challenge. I think it's a good opportunity. But that's the biggest thing that I have on the horizon ahead of me to tackle as part of my professional development after Cal State Long Beach.
Well, wonderful. Congratulations. It's just been, you elevate all of our degrees by going to Georgetown. We are very excited for you. And I know we're up against time, but any final remarks you would like to leave our alumni and students with to think about?
Yeah, my big thing is never hesitate to just cast your voice out there and say what you need and what your personal goals are. Or if you don't know exactly what you want, share it with folks and share that you're open to trying new things. And you'd be amazed at what can happen when you open yourself up to folks. But then at the same time, it's a give and take. Be there for folks, be a good person, help out wherever you can. Because when you do that, magically you get other folks that also help you out in the same way. And when you mix those two, you're able to accomplish a lot of cool stuff. And if I always like to say, because I don't consider myself like this smartest person in the world or whatever, like I by no means I'm anywhere close to that. But I always like to say, if I was able to do it, I'm always happy to share my story in more detail with whoever wants to connect later. And I can work with you, Noemi, and Ricky to share my contact info afterwards. But I always like to say, if I can do it, anyone can probably do it, like to accomplish these goals and to get to wherever I can. So I'm just happy to be part of this conversation. I'm just really thankful to have been invited, Noemi and Ricky, to spend this evening with y'all and share a little bit about my story to get here. And if this helped at least one fellow 49er who's listening or watching, whether it's live or recorded, that'll just warm my heart at the end. And so that's what we're here to do, and that's what we'll continue doing. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Richard. I know I've met you when you were still a student, and you're such an inspiration. I'm very excited for what will come ahead. Please keep us posted. And again, thank you for offering to talk to any of our students or alums that want to connect with you. We're definitely reach out to us, or you're on LinkedIn as well, where they could connect with you as well, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So feel free to reach out. I'll work with Ricky and Noemi to get that info out. But I'm available through LinkedIn, through Facebook, smoke signals, whatever. Like I'm here for my local 49ers, and I'll always have Cal State Long Beach in my heart wherever I go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Everyone watching, thank you for joining us today. Please follow us on our social media channels or visit our website to learn about our future chats and other programming. We thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.